Peterson,
Here.
Commissioner Steen,
Here.
Commissioner Capitan,
Here.
and Commissioner Shirley.
We have a quorum, and for the first time in over a calendar year, we have all 5 commissioners sitting at the dais. Welcome back, everybody. With that, Taylor, you now have Heather's job. Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, presume we had a chance to review the prior meeting minutes. If so, I'd look for a motion to approve or amend accordingly, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, prior meeting minutes be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Same sign. Motion passes. Order of the agenda, we have no amendments that I'm aware of. So with that, the order of agenda is as you see it presented before you. I'd look for a motion to approve accordingly. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and second, order the agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consent agenda. As always, for me, a chance to review the consent agenda. If so, look for a motion to approve it or amend, or discuss, or bring down. Commissioner Shirley. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded, consent agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Shirley,
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan.
Yes.
The consent agenda is approved. Now is the time the Cass County Commission opens itself up to public comment. If anybody virtually or in-house wishes to comment regarding anything not on the agenda for comments, now is that time. I don't see anybody online jumping on. No one jumping here. With that, we'll proceed on to the regular agenda. Item 1, Fargo Renewal Plan Tax Incentive Financing District for 2101. Mr. Gilmore, I saw you on. There you
Thank
are.
you.
Welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioners. I am getting feedback here. This is a request from Tecton. They're going to add 100,000 square feet to their facility in North Fargo. It'll be about a $16 million investment plus equipment. They plan to add 81 jobs over the next 5 years. The recommendation, because of the high number of jobs and the large capital investment, is that this be a 10-year payment in lieu of taxes. However, only the first 5 years would be at 100%, where they would pay 0 taxes on the property or on the expanded building. Of course, they will continue to pay property taxes on the existing structure there. In year 6, they would pay $33,000. That would then increase up to $161,000 in year 10 and be at the full tax rate in year 11. Although even in year 10, they're going to be very close to the existing tax rate. I don't know if do we have someone on from Tecton or Ryan Oshheim who could speak a little bit more about their plans. Ryan or
Mr. Gilmore, we have somebody in-house, actually from the EDC too.
Okay, well, we'll let them explain the program in detail.
So, yeah, thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to come up. Ryan Oss, I'm with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation. I've been working with the team at Tecton for a few months now as they consider their plans for expansion. They're, I think, a representative of a number of companies that are seeing their market opportunities expand as building construction and investment in property continue to grow and increase. And so they're at a point where they're needing to make a decision on where they want to make their investment for their future growth. One of those options is Fargo. They've got a few other areas that they currently operate either as the Tecton brand or under their sister company Marvin, a facility in Virginia, and then other options as well. So this is part of their process in decision making for where they see their future and where they're going to put their investment dollars. And so, most of that's spelled out in your application for you. This is a really solid primary sector company. They've been around since the early 90s. They've continued to make investments and expand here in the market. And they're part of this ecosystem of window manufacturers and developers here in our market, which is another, I think, attractive element of building an ecosystem here for that space. So I'll let maybe Tom with Tecton come up and share a little bit about the project and their particular history in the region, which I think would be a lot more meaningful than me standing up here talking about them.
I don't know how much more meaningful I have to say, but
Lots more.
Okay. So I'm Tom.
Ryan.
All right, I'm Tom Godis. I'm the Senior Director of Operations for Tecton. I've been with the Marvin Companies for about 23 years. We've grown a lot within the community. Most people have no idea who Tecton is, so I always take a minute just to give a little blurb. I mean, we came to town in 1991 and built a 30,000 square foot building, and now Marvin has just over 1 million square feet and a couple thousand jobs in the county. So we like to take a little bit of credit for saying, we came here first and we brought the rest of Marvin with us, and we have a kind of a hub of high performance window manufacturing going on right underneath our nose here in Cass County, and it's pretty impressive. We've grown from our original 30,000 square feet to now have about 180,000 square feet between two locations here in Fargo and another 70,000 square feet down in Virginia. We're trying to make a decision right now on where we expand, whether it's in one of our two current locations or in an additional location. We kind of build high performance kind of hubs. We have, window manufacturing, Tecton, which is the composites manufacturing, and Cardinal IG, and all those in the communities in which we do business. There's a lot of different factors that come into play, but there's a good reason for us to build here in Fargo. We try to build where it makes economic sense for all of our supply base and our customer base, and we're evaluating Fargo right now and looking at 100,000 square foot initially, and we own about 25 acres on the plat of land where we're at right now, so that's where we do our expansion at. Any questions or information I can give relative to the overall project?
You did answer. I was going to ask you when you established yourself. So 92 in here. I thought you were here before 92, I guess.
We formed on paper in 91, opened our building in 92.
Commissioners, questions? All right, sir. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any questions for our partner at the EDC or Mr. Gilmore at City of Fargo? Any discussion? Commissioner Capitan, then Commissioner Brightman. Commissioner Brightman.
Mr. Gilmore, has the city of Fargo acted on this application? The city commission?
The city commission will act on this at 5:15 today. The tax exempt review committee unanimously recommended approval of it at a meeting a couple weeks ago.
Is it your plan to always ask for county permission before the city acts?
Just the way the state law reads, it says, prior to the city approving the tax exemption or giving that final approval, we are supposed to give both the school district and the county 30 days to comment. And so I believe the 30 days is up probably tomorrow or very soon. I think we've gotten out of order a few times, but generally we've gotten your comments or the school district's comments first. The school district has not commented and really allows them to go ahead. It's just been their policy is to not object to any of the tax exemptions and leave those decisions up to the city.
What school district is this facility in?
This would be in the West Fargo School District.
Commissioner Brightman, anything further?
I have nothing further.
Commissioner Capitan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to Move to participate in the request for payment in lieu of taxes, the pilot program in the city of Fargo, submitted by Tecton Products LLC to construct a manufacturing facility expansion for up to a 10-year period.
Is there a second, please? Is there a second? Last call, is there a second? If not,
I have additional questions after the motion.
motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner Steen.
Thank you. Came kind of early for me, Jim, and so that's why I didn't second. I just had some questions on that. But question that we tend to ask is, so you're looking for a fairly extensive pilot or TIF or whatever you want to refer to it as, 10 years and years 1 through 5, $0, zero taxes on the improvements. And does the company need the incentive to build the addition?
Well, we're just really looking.
Could you, sorry, sir, could you come to the mic, please? Thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no, I apologize.
I want to make sure our virtual friends can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's a complex decision, right, on whether to build and where to build. So I liken it to it's a matrix-based decision, right, where all the elements come together. No single element will cause us to build. No single element will cause us to not build. I mean, it's really, your question is very difficult. Would this alone prevent us? No. Could this be a factor that tips the scale? I mean, every community in which we operate has different pros and cons. I mean, and honestly, Fargo is one of the more expensive locations where we operate from a wage standpoint. We will pay a higher wage to bring this addition into Fargo than if we'd bring it into our Virginia facility by quite a bit, a few dollars an hour less. So we're really trying to balance all of those things, and it makes sense to do it in Fargo relative to where the majority of our customer base would be, but we have customer base that goes all throughout the U.S., so that one it's kind of a sliding gray scale also. So I apologize for not giving you a clean, concise answer.
But to address it, that was what I was looking for.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Steen, anything further?
I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion or questions for our owner, City of Fargo? Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Sure, I'll resubmit my motion to approve or to participate in the request for payment in lieu of taxes, the pilot program in the city of Fargo, submitted by Tecton Products LLC to construct a manufacturing facility expansion for up to a 10-year period.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? I can add something quickly here if anybody cares. Probably don't. So I always struggle with these, as most of you know. But much like our friends at Aldebaran, the team at Tecton's been around for a long time, and you've employed many of Fargo and West Fargo and Castletonian all around the region. And while, as always, I want to see people get paid more, and again, the folks in the audience virtually don't have an access to this. It is public record if you're curious. The hourly salaries you have are better than I thought they would be. And that made me, see, when I saw your application, that made me much happier than I would have been had you come in at $9 an hour. I think it probably would have been a no from me, because the reality is that's an unrealistic wage. It's a minimum wage, and I don't know who you're going to find. It's not this decision, not my choice. But if that was the proposal, well, you're just providing more low-wage jobs for I don't know who. But we're looking at, and again, it's public record, so I'm not tattletaling on you. But we're looking at between 15, 20, 20, and 28, and a couple positions at 28 to 35. Substantive pay. And I presume you've got the benefits of a Marvin Windows, a big corporation, so you've got that as well. It's not as though you're just feeding people and letting them walk. I like your group. I bought many of your product through the businesses that I've owned over the years, so I haven't had many complaints, if any. So you build a good widget too. That's always a good sign. So I'm leaning towards supporting this. Again, I struggle always with the 10-year. I like the stepping of it rather than the complete forgiveness of over the 10 years of no one pays any taxes for 10 years and you let your neighbors suffer the burden of your existence. I will be curious to follow with our friends at the West Fargo Public School District. I'm sure they're going to be supportive of it, but usually the impact there is greater because we're looking at 100 people plus or minus over the 10 years. That's going to impact them. I hope anyway it impacts them directly with mommies and daddies and just following the babies that will go through the West Fargo Public School District or the Fargo School District. But I struggle, but I tend to support it based on your longevity. You've been a good Fargo, West Fargo, Cass County, Clay County company, and that to me means something. So, commissioners, anything further? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling, Commissioner Breitling,
Yes.
and Commissioner Peterson.
Yes. Motion
Yeah.
passes.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I realize I got out of order on your agenda because I had the first couple items, so maybe if you want, I can go back to item 1 on the renewal plan.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure where you were going with that, Mr. Gilmore, but I figured you were the smartest one in the room, so I let you buck.
I had my notes mixed up here, I apologize.
That's okay.
The city commission had directed the preparation of this renewal plan. We're looking at a strategy to try to bring more development along the riverfront in downtown Fargo. I think this can be especially successful with the new flood wall that we have, as well as the diversion project on the way. If you look up and down the river, there's a lot of vacant property, surface parking lots, one-story buildings. I think that the total value along the river and is almost, I'm not sure how big the area is, but quite large, is 60 million. I think there's a potential to have that grow by a factor of 3 to get up to over 200 million over the next 10 to 15 years. And so this is a strategy to do that, both trying to get permission from the Diversion Authority to sell some property that we own for private development, turning our old public health building into private development, trying to redevelop the old Mid-America Steel site, and as well as some other redevelopment opportunities along the river. And so what this would do is create a tax increment financing district, a large district that would freeze the tax base in that area. The county, the school, the city, and the park district, and the other taxing jurisdictions would continue to receive property tax revenue based on the value that it's worth right now. And then any future revenue would be used for some public facilities that we think would spur development, some development incentives, demolition of some properties maybe that the city has, and really try to boost this area. We did a downtown plan that identified the need to create a lot more housing downtown. There's, I think, a lot of potential for additional housing sites along the river. We've got a couple underway already. And so, this renewal plan would go for up to 25 years. To the extent that we would ever offer development incentives, we would have to come back to the county and see if you would want to participate in any of those. But that would not apply to public facility projects. So I don't know if you have any questions on it. I don't have a long presentation here. I just wanted to advise you of the plan. The plan isn't carved in stone other than the size of the district. And so the activities might change over the years as we're successful or unsuccessful with some. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Commissioners, as Mr. Gilmore alluded, this is not an action item for us. We don't have any legal authority, I don't believe, within TIF districts. Commissioners, what are your thoughts regarding item 1?
Question.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. What's the timeline you foresee with these projects? I think it's really exciting, and it'll be fun to see what happens here. But I'm just curious: is there an opportunity? Is there a sunset on this particular plan that you have? And when do you think you're going to have substantial buildings up?
I mean, ideally, we'll get started on a couple sites. The old Park East apartment property is owned by the city, and we'd like to make that available for development. We need to get the concurrence of the diversion authority to do that. The other is that old school district warehouse site at the far north end of the district along 2nd Street. We're proposing that we kind of demolish and clean up that site. The 2 other sites that would be worked on relatively, so probably 3 others, is the old public health building, making some decisions there. The Fargo high rise, they're in the process of moving everyone out. I believe of the 247 housing units in that building, only 85 to 95 are occupied at this point. And then the Mid-America Steel site, unfortunately became a higher visibility site 2 weeks ago, trying to get that site cleaned up and for development. So I think we'd start on all 5 of those relatively soon. Mid-America is going to take probably a couple of years to lay the groundwork for that redevelopment. The TIF district by state law is limited to 25 years. There's a possibility of a 5-year extension, but you have to reset the value, and so it's not as likely to happen. And so the pedestrian bridge over the river is probably the first public activity that we would do. That would be in 2023, a couple of years out. So I think it'll start off probably a little slow, and then hopefully pick up some steam and get other developers interested in some of these vacant parking lots along the river area.
Commissioner Brightling.
Section 1.9 of the proposal places or asks or requests the county auditor to provide information and do so on an annual basis. Is this a standard provision in these types of agreements?
Yeah, it's a standard in state law. The county auditor kind of keeps track of the TIF district. As you know, property values are kind of set by the city assessor and kind of go through those boards of equalization. So the county auditor then tracks what the base value is and what the incremental increase is each year, and provides the money to the city TIF fund. Then we have annual reporting to the state, as well as we certainly report to the city commission on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any further discussion? I guess, Mr. Gilmore, as I'm fully aware and you're fully aware, the county really has no say in this. But as you might guess, I, speaking just for myself, not for the commission, I think TIF districts are more than unneeded. I think they hurt the overall economy of an ecosystem, so to speak. I'm going to steal a word from our presenter prior. And 25 years is an incredibly unreasonable length of time. I'll probably be dead in the grave, and I'm not that old by the time that hits. I think it's a shame that the tax revenue from what we've been told is going to be something that's going to be revolutionary in terms of income savings, meaning taxes that other people would not have to pay because we've improved the lots, we've improved these properties, and now they won't be paying taxes directly as the rest of us do. I think the city of Fargo, and I get what you're going for, and certainly in areas like Mid-America, certainly areas like where the old high-rise will probably be redeveloped, that little core. I think you can solve all the issues you have through other means, but this simply makes it easier for you, and I think you're intending to circumvent the process of having our input. Yes, that's accusatory, maybe somewhat inflammatory, but I don't know that I care. I think that everyone in the city of Fargo, West Fargo, Cass County, Clay County, Moorhead should pay their fair share. And when we take a chunk this large out of the city and simply have that money go back to the people that live there, essentially just spinning this money in a circle, is a shame. I think the entire city of Fargo should be a TIF district. I don't want to pay taxes either, Mr. Gilmore. I don't want to pay my fair share either, Mr. Gilmore, but I have to. And when I ask my neighbors, that were also some of whom happen to be developers, when they build a building out in the middle of nowhere or redevelop on whatever site, be it infill, they aren't going to have the opportunity to have this TIF district help them out. So again, I realize I have no comment on this or I have no input on this, but I want the public at large to realize I think TIF districts should not exist. And I think, again, they're a way to circumvent the process of allowing input from school districts, counties, and I will leave it at that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a couple comments, and
Please do.
maybe sometime on your agenda. When we look at probably, I think it's about a dozen TIF districts that have closed out here in Fargo in the last 14 years, we've added $383 million to the tax base. And with these TIF districts, all the property owners in the area are going to, unless they receive some incentive, are going to continue to pay their property taxes. And so it really goes to more public activities that benefit the public than it does, private developers. And because I've just seen, we get a lot of return on our investment. It costs some money to help clear a site, but some of these developments would not have happened. And I'd be happy to come to a meeting when you have more time and kind of show you the TIF districts that have closed out, the ones that are active and will close out soon. And 25 years seems like a long time. And it is. That's how long I've been working on some of these TIF districts. But most of them have closed out and are paying much more property taxes today than the day they started. I'd love to show you how that works and make that more available to the public.
Mr. Gilmore, I understand how it works. The reality is you presuppose none of this development have transpired. And I think the means to accomplish what you're needing to do or wanting to do, or these developers need to do, can be simply accomplished through Renaissance Zone, can be accomplished through other means rather than saying, we're just going to take this chunk of land out of development or out of taxes for 25 years. And I realize there are properties there that are paying taxes right now, but there's an awful lot that would be, I don't think you're going to have any issues at all whatsoever redeveloping the blank chunks of land and then the Mid-America Steel portion of this project or this TIF district. You will have no problems, none whatsoever, having someone come in and develop that land. We've just had a project come through, as you did too, on a very troublesome chunk of land along Maine, and the developer found a way to make it work, and it's ingenious. And I don't know if that's going to come before this commission, before the Renaissance Zone board, but I believe in our developers, and I believe in their ingenuity. I believe in the power of income and capitalism. And like I said, sir, taking this off the rolls for 25 years, you can tell me all day long about what it is, what it was. Things are going to happen regardless. Renaissance Zone worked. Downtown Fargo, we've won. It's time to end these things, or at least be much more, maybe much less generous in terms of what we've been giving folks. So again, that's a discussion you and I can have, and you will never convince me, and I will never convince you, and that's just fine. Commissioners, anything further? Thank you. We will now proceed from item 1 on to what we already proceeded on, item 2. Item 2B, which is West Fargo. West Fargo Healthcare Group. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Lauren Orchard. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of West Fargo. And tonight we have both B and C in front of you. They are part of one larger medical campus.
So if I can have you pause for one
Yes.
moment. They are 2 separate items on the agenda.
Yes.
They
Yes,
should be treated separately, correct, Mr. Wilson?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanna make
and
sure.
they are treated separately in both the incentive analysis that was provided to you, but in the memo that we write, they are 2 connected buildings, and they do have connected ownership, I believe, between the 2 entities. So I will talk in general terms, but can always separate it out between those 2 groups. So there'll be 2 separately taxed entities. So
Perfect.
we have the OP Medical Group is the smaller one, and the larger one is the healthcare group, I believe. So both entities are still anonymous today, so we are just referring to them by those code names. And together, they are proposing to add $26 million in taxable value after the completion of the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes that has been requested, which for context would be the 2nd highest valuation in West Fargo. So this would be a huge increase to our tax base after the completion of the pilot.
Can I
And-
interrupt you for
yes,
one moment?
yes.
So I received this packet
Yes.
mailed to me individually. Commissioners, did you also receive a packet from the city of West Fargo?
I received it in just the packet for the meeting.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure you had a chance to see this ahead of time, so.
Sure. So
Perfect,
before
thank
we dive into the presentation, which I will allow the development company to come up and present to you, I want to talk to you about what the pilot is and the structure of it, and then also what the process has been before we brought it to you tonight. So the pilot that has been requested for each separately would be a 10-year pilot. The first 5 years would be 100% of a tax exemption on only the improvements, so they would continue to pay taxes on what the value is currently. And then for the following 5 years, it would be 50%. So it would be that drop down for years 6 through 10. So as you all know, if it goes beyond 5 years, we have to bring it before both West Fargo Schools and the County Commission. We have already gone to West Fargo Schools after completing our own internal processes at the city. At the City of West Fargo, we have a pretty rigorous process for these applications. They go in front of our development team, so Public Works, Economic Development, Engineering, and Planning. I'll review it beforehand. And then we send it to our Economic Development Advisory Committee, which has business owners from the communities that have been appointed by the City Commission. All of those committees have recommended approval of this application. It fits with our development plans for the city in general, and they see no red flags or issues with it as presented. Also economically, as I mentioned, it would be a huge windfall for the city after the completion of the incentive. And even in year 6, we would see a substantial increase in that property tax revenue. So we're very excited. As far as the job numbers, this is very impressive for me from the applications I've seen since I've worked here in West Fargo. Between both applications, and again, I can separate this out if you're interested, we have 203 new jobs to the city with an average salary of $64,000 a year. And that's among both part-time and full-time workers. And the applicant has separated out the highest level salaries because those would be owners in the medical group. So these really are the day-to-day workers that are being paid these high medical salaries. And on top of that, they believe that they would see about 200 patients per day coming from the 100-mile radius of the metro area, shopping, dining, and staying in the area as well. So we're really excited about that windfall to the economy too. So I'm here for any questions about that process, but if you'd like to learn more about the actual development, we do have Austin Morris from Enclave Group, which is the development company that would be constructing the building and is representing both of those entities.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for our EDC Director, Commissioner Steen?
I have a couple, and I think what I heard you say was that they would still pay taxes on the land.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and that's where I'm a little confused, because I would look at that schedule, years 1 through 5, it just says $100. Is that in addition to the land?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, so that's how we do payment in lieu of taxes with the city of West Fargo. They still have to be paying something in lieu of those taxes. So that is on the improvements, they're paying the $100 per year for those
Okay, I just
first
want to make
5
sure
years.
it's in addition to the tax on the
Correct,
land.
yes.
Is there anything currently on the land?
No, not to my knowledge.
And
Wild turkeys.
Well, they
near
don't
the
pay
Cheyenne River.
taxes, do they? So,
It's across the highway from Titan and Bobcat. Across the interstate next to the river.
it's right behind Costco to the west, if
Right.
that helps.
didn't have a
place
chance to
you.
drive out and look at it, that's why I'm asking the
Sure,
question where it's
right.
at. So another question would be, who owns the property after the completion of the construction?
I will leave that over to our developer Enclave. But I would believe that it would be both of these entities, but I'll leave it to you, Austin.
Do you have any other questions?
I had the exact same question.
Who owns the property at the completion of the construction?
They will.
They being
So we have zero ownership in the
zero in
property,
this.
in the project.
So you're the
whatsoever.
developer, you take a development fee and that's it.
Design builder.
Yeah, I
Hey.
mean, we don't even get a development fee, so it's, we're a general contractor with
Okay.
development company arms, so we're building the project for them. Yep.
And I know this is in here, but who is they?
Yes, so the two organizations, they're both, I believe, collectives of doctors that have started their own ownership. One is Healthcare Group. We can't disclose who they are as of yet, but we will be able to when we write the development agreements after approval. And then the other is OP Medical Group. and they are an ophthalmology center. So Austin will go through what each of those buildings would provide in services and what they would be doing, but I don't want to get into that presentation and step on his toes.
Go ahead, Chris. Another follow-up question. I asked this last time. So I'm looking at the projections, the operation projections for each of these entities, and I'm not sure which one I have first here. It's, let's see, healthcare group. And so I look at the revenues, expenses, and net income, and they're generating a 37% net income on the operations from the property. And yet, there's a need for the property tax incentive.
And I think,
I'd love to generate 37% on
Sure.
everything I do, but I don't.
and
So
I
I'm
think,
curious how that works.
I think that question really comes down to philosophy on tax incentives and when are they appropriate and when are they not. And what I always ask applicants, because we have a lot of pressure from our city commission, who I'll go to right after this commission, is, does it meet the but-for test? And that is a huge implication that we ask every applicant. And this applicant has responded that they are looking at other sites and that if they were not able to get the incentive, that they have other properties that they've identified. And so it really does come down to the overall cost benefit of each property. And this one in particular, they are requesting this incentive. And so it's our responsibility to go through the process to see if that will make it a site that they would pursue. So my understanding is that they would not be able to do it without the incentive at this location.
In not the same line, but of questioning, but I noticed that there's talking about new positions, and these are offshoots of existing professional groups within the community. Correct?
I don't know who they are, so I can't answer that question. All I have as context is new jobs to the city of West Fargo.
Well, I'm going to assume they are within the community at this point, and so we're basically providing a service that's being provided, and maybe there's additional demand for these services out there. I haven't done a study. I wouldn't know, but so that's curious as to whether this is an offshoot of an existing organization, or we actually bringing something new into the community. That's the reason I'm asking the question.
Sure. And what I can say is they're not in West Fargo currently. I don't know about within the region because I don't know who they are, and I won't be able to know who they are until they either receive or do not receive the incentive.
Okay.
So I can't answer that question directly, but as far as the city is concerned, they're all new jobs to the city of West Fargo.
As far as the city is concerned, what?
They're all new jobs to the city of West Fargo. So that is, and it's also about drawing in those patients too.
Commissioners, any further questions for ADC Director? If not,
Okay.
Joel, would like to share some thoughts, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. First, wanted to share that, as a developer, we get the opportunity to work with a variety of different potential customers and people that come to us for land, real estate investment guidance, and development and construction. Just from a contextual perspective, when I pursue tax incentive work, whether it be in our community or others, I look for certain things before I'd even pursue the effort. So out of about 30 projects per year, we end up pursuing tax incentive of some kind on 1 to 2 out of 30. And that's because most don't meet the muster to go through the path of going to these meetings, 7 or 8 meetings. And they don't meet the economic muster that, when I look at it, does it add value to the community in a way that is impactful, not only from a tax base, but also from a community benefit. This one that we had the opportunity to work on was, out of the 10 years that I've been doing this in this fashion, was really the first one that has hit every box that I look at from an economic development standpoint. And I'd start with resident impact. Does it impact the community by adding value to either the county or, in this case, city of West Fargo? And the opportunity for this medical specialty campus private practice facility to not only add a job base, but also add additional patient options. So people have the option to consider different regional providers in the area, some private practice, but this is looking at expanding on the private practice medical group's core strength, which is surgical, and going from a situation where we're basically quadrupling the impact that they can make within the community. What they're proposing to develop or build here and operate is a 93,000 square foot facility, which to my knowledge would be the largest private practice facility from here between Bismarck and probably St. Cloud, Minneapolis. So additional patient access to a community is a positive benefit on the community as a whole. From a job growth perspective, I was excited because most of the time that I work on these, whether it be industrial projects or adding an office job base, most of them have trouble passing the median income base. This one didn't have trouble. I've worked with Lauren Orchard in the past on other projects that simply couldn't get over that hurdle. So I've gotten to know that from a city standpoint, what a city wants. They want good paying jobs that add value to the community. To come out of the gates with full and part-time workforce at $64,000 average. And that does not include the physicians' wages, because the physicians drive their wages by being owners in the facility. The third one is retail spend impact. Adding 200 jobs in this area along veterans, adding 200 patients per day over that 10-year period will have an impact in the retail core for West Fargo and for our county as a whole. This is a regional draw. They draw from 180 mile radius for their patient volume. It's specialty care. From a catalytic impact, we have 32 acres of undeveloped land behind Costco, to the west of Costco. This sets the stage for what I would consider A+ dense impact. And what that means from my standpoint is that what we fit within that very small swath of land along I-94, we're talking about only, I want to say 5.5 acres. So 5.5 acres, we have $26 million of tax increment or tax base. And we have an additional 6.5 acres of property available to develop within their site, which my imagination tells me it'll be additional medical users. And then we have 20 acres to the east. This will guide that. We're already working on zoning from a commercial perspective on the 20 acres, and we're really setting the stage for a Class A corridor, which also contributes significantly to efficient tax base compared to really any other use, including multifamily. I'll go through, if you want a page, I don't have control, so if you could scroll down. What do? Here's the top down. We're at, okay, that's good. So they would add 93,000 square feet in one building and additional 30,000 square feet roughly in the building attached. In the first building, which is the ambulatory surgical center on second floor, they'd provide the following services: ear, nose, and throat, orthopedics, ophthalmology, neurosurgery, and spine, plastics, and hand. And that service menu will only grow because they're planning this facility to have an ambulatory surgical center with 6 ORs, with clinic opportunity on the first floor, and then third floor is not occupied. So they're recruiting actively additional practice providers that wouldn't be competitive in nature with their existing groups, which will add attributed value to the community by providing more services. You can go to the next slide if you would. So from a regional perspective, as we look at this, I'm just excited that we're adding a true surgical center in our community that's the largest of its kind between Bismarck and St. Cloud. Additionally, I think it's really exciting that they've added a potential hotel stay on the facility. This would be a first of its kind. That needs to get approval from the North Dakota Department of Health, which they're working on. That would allow, most of the time, same-day surgery centers only can go to 23 hours, essentially 24 hours or less, and then they have to discharge patients. If you can roll up and be able to keep patients there longer, you can expand surgical offerings, and this would be the first of its kind in our region, outside of staying in a traditional hospital bed stay. They're able to operate more efficiently, and you can go to the next slide. And one thing I love about this facility is that it's private, so it pays taxes. There are many private practice medical facilities in town, but the more major hospital systems that do services like this do not pay taxes. So we have a private group that would pay taxes in full. Over the 10-year pilot, from an ask perspective, years 1 through 10, the applicants would still pay $1.25 million in taxes. So overall, from an evaluation perspective, it hits all of my marks. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you guys have.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Sherling.
So we're already a regional medical hub here.
Yep.
What is this going to do for folks that live within 150 miles that we can't already get?
That you cannot already get. So the unique aspect of private practice is a different approach to medical. From a operations perspective, they can serve patients at roughly 60% of the cost of a major regional provider, especially by doing it in-house. And then additionally, as we've seen over the last many years, patient options is important to any community. This is a super innovative practice where they want to gain and earn people from afar to practice privately and build essentially their destiny. I know firsthand from when we're in the design process with these doctors who are a part of it, all I hear is patient experience, patient experience, patient experience. We need to get them in efficiently. We need to have low wait times. We need to have them, at the end of the day, rate us highly from a service standpoint and an overall experience standpoint. And I just think in any community, if we can expand patient options, it's a positive.
So you talk about a workforce of potentially 200 people. Wouldn't that workforce just come from across town from the other medical centers? And my understanding is that it's tough to find qualified healthcare providers as it is. Are people really going to pack up and move here just for these jobs, these 200 people? Or are they going to come from across the metro area where they're already working in healthcare?
That's a great question. I think from a recruiting standpoint, all medical providers right now are trying to recruit either the interior of our community, but they need to recruit elsewhere. I know it's super challenging, even from our memory care facility standpoint. Finding nurses is challenging. I know that they've hired people outside of our community to work at their existing practice. But we do have a limited base of people that graduate from the nursing programs and other technical programs that it is competitive. So I
just question whether or not you'd actually have 200 people and their families
moving
in,
here
because of that. And I guess just I'll share my thoughts here. I mean, there's lots of private practice physician groups in town that do surgery. You can get orthodontic work, you can get plastic surgery, you can get your cataracts removed, any number of things. I don't believe they got help. They're private businesses, just like any other private business in town. I'm just, what makes this different than all those multitudes of private medical practices?
That's a great question. I think someone who wants to operate independent of other doctors and build out their own individual OR and serve their existing patient base, whether it be in a retina specialty or orthodontics. They can do that, but what is the impact compared to building out a 30,000 square foot ambulatory surgical center that will be a draw for other practitioners?
Will this group provide any health care that isn't already provided here? Will it be new transplant surgery or something that people have to drive to Minneapolis for? Will they be able to stay here and get it done?
I'd have to.
And I guess
Yeah, I'd
you
have
might
to.
not know that.
Yeah, I'd have to. I'd have to ask them. I know enough to answer what practice areas they provide from
Yeah,
an
and I don't need
advanced.
to put you on the spot.
No,
I
from an
get that
advanced
you're-
specialty
you're the
standpoint, I'm not
contractor,
positive.
so
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Steen.
Also make a comment on what she had asked.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and that's a wonderful question about why do other businesses not receive the same type of tax incentive? And usually, what I communicate to our city commissioners is we're restricted in a lot of ways by the guidelines that we have for when can we offer incentives and when can we not. And in this particular case, we have the density of the property value and the density of the jobs in one location that allows us to offer an incentive that would be beneficial to a business. So when we have those smaller businesses that produce a lower amount in property value and produce less in the sheer number of jobs, it becomes harder for us to offer those incentives just physically because there's a better benefit to offering a tax incentive when the property taxes are higher. So when the property taxes are lower, the incentive means less to that business. So in this location, we're also very excited by how in a dense location, we can see such a high increase in property valuation because it also reserves the land that we have and our development potential rather than spreading it out across the entire metro region. So we're excited by that density, and that's also what allows us to give those higher level of incentives.
Christine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had some of the same questions that Commissioner Sherling had. Where are these people going to come from? And that's why I asked earlier on, isn't it just taken from Peter, from across the street? Because I don't see that that we have 200 healthcare providers coming to this community because we have a shortage now. That's a concern of mine. So we're just going to drive up the cost in the community by paying, having to pay more for the services we already provide. So that's a thought. The other issue that Commissioner Sherling also hit on was it seems that we might be creating some type of unfair advantage here, and a lot of private providers in the medical practice field that just set up their practice and they just do what they do, type of thing. And so those are concerns I have. Question I also have, this is now I'm switching gears. In the information you provided, there says there's a public hearing has been scheduled tonight at the West Fargo City Commission for public comment. Are they taking action tonight, or is this just a hearing?
It's both. So thank you for that question. So I forgot to clarify that this has also already been seen by the West Fargo School District, and they have approved it as well. So now we're at the final stage. So after this commission meeting, we're going directly to our city commission meeting where we'll have a public hearing. We'll have two separate public hearings because they're two separate applications. I will present the same things that I presented to you all tonight, and then they would make a motion to approve the tax incentive as presented and also to approve corresponding agreements where we really lay out everything that you've seen in front of you, especially with job numbers and salaries. And the applicant has to produce reports annually to make sure that they're hitting those targets as have been presented to you today. So for example, if they were unable to find enough workers to meet those goals, their incentive would be retracted proportionally. So that's how we've designed it. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat, yes. So there is an intent to take action tonight at the West Fargo
Yes.
City Commission.
Yes.
Is there an intent to find out any additional information before they take action as to who the owners might be? I'm just curious. I mean, I'm not in the typical fashion of just we're going to provide some incentive for somebody who was anonymous. That doesn't feel good to me.
Okay.
as a county commissioner looking after people's money. So I'm just kind of curious as to what actions this city of West Fargo will take. Will they had asked for additional information, or is this quiet? Is this, they'll never be heard until something is signed? I'm just curious how that's going to work.
I did ask the question to our city attorney just to understand when do we need to go public with the names, and my understanding is that it is something that the city can choose to keep private until the action is taken, but it is up to the city commission. So in theory, we could draft an agreement and have it between attorney-client privilege and not reveal until it has been awarded. That's my understanding. However, it's up to the city commission with what they require from the applicant. So there's potential, but I couldn't tell you the future.
If I may, do you anticipate any public comment from any of the healthcare providers tonight?
I have
at
not
the meeting in West
heard,
Fargo? Yeah, I mean, you've heard something, your questions you've gotten in.
I have not received any questions as is required by state century code. We do have to publish in the paper for any competitors that there might be. And we have done so, and I have not heard any response. So I don't anticipate that.
At what point in time will additional information be shared with the public? If it's approved
Yes.
tonight at West Fargo, and if the county were to put a hold on it, because we can, if we just choose to wait, and we can still come into it afterwards, is that information still be made available? Or
I would need to talk to our attorney. I would assume that would be okay, but I don't know. I don't have my attorney with me right now to answer that question. We had been relying on this process where it would be talked about at each of the various commissions and then presented and then revealed, but I can ask.
Okay.
Commissioners, any further discussion or questions?
For our chair, as chair of this commission, are you aware of, without divulging, okay. So you don't have a clue either.
So in fact, just to clarify that, my biggest question I had was, and not to disparage your project, it looks frickin' awesome, trust me, was you're building a strip mall. What do you need a strip mall? But then I found out through your question, this group is going to own the property. If you were going to own it, I'd be voting no right now. The reality is that, and I don't know that I'll vote yes or no right now, but that would have ended it for me because, yeah, you're a developer. You develop things, good for you. But like I referenced prior with Aldebaran, a massive investment by a group of people is a far different thing than building a strip mall, even if it's a pretty one, because they can just simply vacate in 2 years. Yep, it didn't work out. Well, if you're building this facility and you're bringing on, now that you've learned more about the programming, you're bringing on medical practitioners, probably mostly doctors. They're fairly well capitalized. I certainly hope they are. So I don't think there's going to be an issue making the mortgage payment. So, yeah, I have no clue.
And along with that, if there were to be a sale of the property, let's say, they would have to pay back the entirety of the incentive. So that's all written in our development agreements as well.
I think the amount of equipment they're going to be putting into this is going to substantively surpass anything this building will. Probably, things are getting cheaper, but there's going to be heavy equipment involved in investment too. So, commissioners, further questions or discussion? Commissioner,
Comment. I think the opportunity here is significant as well. I mean, it looks like a great project. The concerns I've already expressed, I'm not going to repeat those. Lack of some information, I'm hesitant to take action before the city of West Fargo does. I really am. I don't know where they're headed. I don't know what the kind of public input you're going to have. We didn't really disclose this as a public input forum at the county. That's not what we were looking at. I'm curious as to what that public input would be tonight. So that's my concerns.
So to that end, to some degree, I'm actually meeting with you, Commissioner Steen, not to tip my hand here, but it's, we didn't know anything about it. Again, it looks awesome. Not only from a job perspective, but a building development perspective. I think you are. It's very important, I think, to me anyway. I guess I'm biased. But the key of what this land will become, right? We're not building a metal building with some garage doors and an asphalt parking lot. Yay, good start. We're building something nice, and that will then feed on itself, hopefully, which again is what your hope is. But Mr. Wilson, to Commissioner Steen's point, if we don't act tonight, because we want to become maybe better educated as to what our peers are thinking and greater details, logistically, legally, and maybe Mr. Burdick
we can take option number 3, which is to negotiate directly with the.
And I'm wondering, just to get some clarification, I'm wondering what the what perspective or what downstream effects am I not considering regarding timeline? How does that negatively impact us? Mr. Burdick, I'll let Mr. Wilson talk, and if you can add anything, great. Or Ms. Peters, I see you're on too. And I don't know if you have any comments one way or the other, but Mr. Wilson, share with us your thoughts, please.
Mr. Chair, as you're speaking, I am going back to see when we received the application from the city of West Fargo, because we have the 30-day
Maybe
requirement there.
While you're digging around, maybe
And
my developer, my EDC director,
Yes,
I just don't know what I'm voting on other than a really awesome maybe project
sure.
that
So what I can tell you is my understanding of Century Code. So we are required to give 30 days notice, which we did exactly 30 days ago. I remember.
31 actually at this
Is it? Okay.
That's-
So we submitted that letter. We hand delivered it, and we also sent certified mailing. And then the county commission has the ability within those 30 days to give us a response. I believe that written response can even give us a different timeline of when you'll make the decision, but we do need to receive a response within those 30 days. Otherwise, it's considered as approved. So that's my understanding of what State Century Code says. But I'm happy to be corrected by an attorney as well. And then what we do for process, just so you all are aware, and if I need to edit our process, I'm happy to do so. We go through that letter, but then we also give your county administrator a call to ask what is the process, how do we get on your agenda, that kind of stuff. And then we communicate that back to the applicant. And so it just so happened in this process that both the school district and the county commission were meeting before our city commission meeting. So we'll follow whatever process both governing boards would like us to follow. We just have to abide by notifying you within that 30-day window and then getting it on our own board's agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the letter from West Fargo is dated March 5th, stamped received on March 8th. So that would have been that we got it the day, likely the day that staff and myself would have met with the chair to approve the agenda on the 15th. And I was communicated with Lauren that we would schedule this for for this meeting today. With the 8th, obviously 30 days from the 8th, we have a couple of days here. One of the options that you do have is to indicate that you wanted to continue to negotiate. And if that were an option that you utilized, we would indicate that back to West Fargo, City of West Fargo formally. I would plan to attend their meeting this evening. If there was any additional public comment, feedback, I would provide that back to you in the form of a briefing memo or prep if you scheduled a follow-up of under that additional request additional negotiation. And I would, with the chair's approval, I would recommend bringing that back to your next meeting on the 19th. If
I approve this, Mr. Burdick. Thank you, sir.
And that's simply gleaning what I think I'm hearing from conversation. I would whatever you direct me to do. Otherwise, would be happy to do that as well.
Perfect. Commissioners, any questions regarding this? Commissioner Brightling.
Do the timelines that you described extend to both applications?
I would be, because they came to us as a group. I would respond to them I would treat them as a group in our response and our follow-up.
It's essentially a simultaneous application. It's two projects, but am I misspeaking? I don't think I'm
No.
misspeaking. Okay. Further question or discussions, commissioners? Commissioner Steen?
I'd like to support this project, but probably just need some additional information and maybe a little bit more time. And we're not talking dragging this out either, that type of thing. And I'd prefer to take the route provided to us under option number 2, notify the City of West Fargo we are not going to participate, but we will negotiate the terms of the property taxes in it with the city, and that leaves the door open, even if the negotiations ends up being the same exact terms. That's my take. I'll make that as a motion.
Is there a second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Steen, I agree. And I think this is a good project in the end. I think it's going to be funded by your neighbors, their tax dollars and their good intent. But I just think that we need to hear what's going on.
You know, the public comment, what happens there, and just.
Okay.
Your motion is to delay it?
Well, it's to negotiate. So
Yeah, can we clarify the motion just one more time?
Commissioner Steen is essentially, Commissioner Steen is essentially asking that we as Cass County agree to negotiate with the city of West Fargo. And what we've done in the past, just so those of you know, we've done this repeatedly with the city of Fargo, and that gets us past this timeline. It allows us to hear what the same exact things happen in the city of Fargo. We need to hear what people think. You know, we're going to stay your vote on this. Well, let's hear what our peers are thinking. Let's make sure we have a time to hear the public comment, and we almost always, lean, but we just need more information at this time. Does that make sense? Okay. Commissioners, any further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
This would pertain to both applications.
I would
Simultaneous.
say for both, yes.
Did we get a second?
It's Commissioner Brightling.
This is right then.
Okay. Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling, and Commissioner Brightling.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you both for your time. It is a wonderful project. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda, coronavirus update, Mr. Wilson.
I just have one.
One moment, I just want to coordinate with them, then I'm going
Yep.
to.
You
have
do
one
that,
question
and then
too.
Commissioner
Mr.
Steen.
Wilson, could you turn on some lights for Taylor over there? She's sitting in the dark.
I will do that.
Is it interesting you noticed that? Yeah. Mr. Wilson, you coordinate.
Okay, yeah, I am.
Let's go.
Looking for a light switch.
For sake of giving Mr. Wilson some time to talk to our friends from West Fargo, would you mind if we
Here we
go in the wrong way? Mr. Wilson, are you going to talk to them, or can you jump into your coronavirus right now?
No, I just talked very briefly. As soon as we're done with our meeting, I'm headed over to West Fargo. I'm going to hear. I'm going to get over there as quickly as I can.
Okay, perfect. So you don't need any time right now?
No, I
Okay,
I
perfect.
just need time to bring up my briefing memo for the coronavirus update, and we'll be ready to go.
If you needed time, I was going to go to 4, but right now, item number 3, coronavirus update, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, probably the 3 largest items that I bring up for your consideration today are consider approval of the general contractor, mechanical, and electrical contracts on the jail intake expansion project. And these are contracts that were let for bid, and we received bids in middle of February. We had a little delay because we had to just get some clarification from each of the bidders on schedule, because originally there were some questions of price versus completion date. In the end, it worked out to the lowest qualified bidders were also the most timely in terms of completing the project. So that worked well. So we do have for your consideration today general contractor contract with TF Powers in the amount of $3,104,000, mechanical contract for Laney's in the amount of $705,916, and electrical contract to Vinco in the amount of $927,800. So I can continue through the other elements of the project, or if you want to take a vote on that, by your nodding your head, I think you're looking for me to keep going.
Just do holistic, and then we can
Okay.
go back with questions if we have any, Mr. Wilson.
Certainly. So that is something we will be looking for your approval on. Additionally, there is one element that we would be asking for, we are in the briefing briefing memo. You noticed there was an item in there about the chiller. I've had a conversation with our state's attorney this afternoon. We are going to hold that one for now, so we are not looking for action on the chiller. We just have some additional clarification we need to work on that. So you can skip that one for now. I have what may be a bit of a discussion here on the American Rescue Plan action funds.
Let's do that
Okay,
next.
that is certainly switching gears.
Yeah, so if we would just focus on jail construction contract, is there anything else for jail construction?
On jail construction, and this is where I'm jumping down to really the end of this item, that we would be looking for consideration of the 3 contracts that I mentioned earlier, as well as approval of a agreement for with Travelers for builder's risk insurance in the amount of $4,175 and materials testing required for construction with Northern Technologies in an amount not to exceed $12,221.
So move.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Wilson, that gets us on a course to break ground, correct?
There we go. We are that moves us forward.
Perfect. Commissioners, any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Breitling,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes.
Commissioner Steen,
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, anything else regarding the jail construction project?
Nothing regarding the construction project.
Continue, please.
Will do. The American Rescue Plan Action Fund Act funding. This is the project, the package that Congress enacted in March. Has direct allocations to individual counties and cities and school districts, I believe, across the country. On the NACO website, there is an amount listed in excess of $35 million that would be directed to Cass County. That is provided by the National Association of Counties. They've provided estimates of amounts for all counties across the country. Money will be dispersed in 2 installments. The first installment within 60 days of passage of the legislation, and the second installment 1 year later. All funds have to be expended by the end of 2024. Now, we have provided a number of concepts or ideas for your basically hearing consideration today of ideas that I have received of how commissioners may like to expend some of these funds, or input I've heard from the general public. We are at a point right now where we are still awaiting final clarification from the Department of Treasury of exactly how the funds can be expended. So we really are not in a position at this point for you to be considering actual decisions. This is obviously this is a big package, happened in a relatively short amount of time, and so since we don't have final guidelines yet, we just are not to that point yet. But if I didn't bring it up, I had a strong suspicion that the 5 of you would have had questions for me at this point. So I wanted to share with you some of the different ideas that I've heard, either from all of you, and quite frankly, that I've heard in a couple of cases from external entities that have approached us. So I have a list here. I will walk through those individually, unless there are any questions for me overall before I go through specifics.
So, Commissioner Steve, and me.
Curious, Mr. Chair, we've read all these. Were you going to go through all of them? I read them all. I'm assuming we all have.
That's what my intent is going to be, to circumvent what he's trying to do.
I appreciate that.
So here's the reality of this. As Mr. Wilson said, and I always struggle with creating lists, Mr. Wilson, I didn't want him to provide this list because this is all wishful thinking right now. What happens when you give someone their item on a list, they suddenly say, I'm going to take ownership of this, and this will be a project that we're going to get. And the reality of this resource, this money, between 32 and 35 million, depending on how things all work out, we don't know what it can be used for. Right now, it can be used for specifically infrastructure and water. So this list, with the exception of highway, is a moot point. We can't do anything with it because according to the Treasury rules right now as interpreted, it's a very strict interpretation. I think Mr. Montplaisir copied out all of us with either a screenshot or a PDF. If not, I'm pretty sure he did, that explained 3 basic line items, and it's infrastructure, period. Oh, and then, so it's infrastructure, water, and then like 911. So I think that's where you could make a nuanced assumption that we get to the dispatch center or the remaining resources that we may need to fund out the rest of our siren project. You can make an argument that that could be funded. Otherwise, there's no widgets that we can purchase. That may change based on the lobbying of the cities and the counties and our friends in DC, the Hovens and Kramers, because the reality is if this money doesn't get spent here, it's going to get spent somewhere. So in lieu of going through this list, I think it's important that it's provided. Again, I wouldn't want it to do it this way, but know this commission and those listening online or listening in the audience, there's going to be some massive amount of money that's going to come to us. What can we do with it? I don't know. And just to share with you other numbers, and I think we talked about this before, whether in passing or otherwise, the county's going to get the 30 million. The city of Fargo, I think, is 18 or 19 million. City of West Fargo is 5 million. And where I'm going with this is, if it's just that strict and just that rigid of a set of parameters, the Fargo Public School District is going to be getting upwards of $75 million. The city of West Fargo's school district is going to get upwards of, I think, $18 or $24 million. If they can only be used for infrastructure and water, increasing the access through data, what does the city of Fargo do, or city of West Fargo School District do with $75 million? I mean, rewiring things? Again, I don't know. So I think that once we get to the point of what will you let us do with this, I'm hoping that our lobbyists and our teams in DC will be able to create this in a much more, I don't even know the term, but allowing us more flexibility than we have right now. So with that, Commissioner Sherlin.
Oh, gosh, I just went blank. I was so enamored with your speech.
No, actually, disappointed would be the word, because I would love to fund a lot of these things myself, and I actually created, so you know, I do have a spreadsheet on my little station. I already spent $32.5 million, so that's me in my thing. So that's what I'd like to do, but again, it's an arbitrary discussion because I don't think we'll be able to do my wish list either. So
my understanding is that this cannot affect your budget. Is that correct? So we cannot decrease property taxes with this money.
So
there might be ways to not have to increase things, but we can't just come along budget time and say, okay, everybody's getting some reductions in their property tax.
So as of right now, it is specifically called out, these dollars cannot be used to directly reduce or subsidize taxes, A, and then B, cannot be used to fund pensions. And I'm not in DC and I don't do the Kramer-Hoven Armstrong deal, but I guarantee you that was because of the blue states, the pensions in California. And the Republicans are obviously impotent right now, but at least they have a little bit of pull where they could say, you're not going to fund your $1 trillion deficit, California. Your, I think it's $800 million or $800 billion deficit, Illinois. That's where those came from. So I do think we can make, like I said, an argument towards resources. An example, again, would be our siren project, where we're not directly reducing. All of a sudden, we're going to come in and subsidize, have maybe like a tax holiday where no one pays property taxes for the county for a year. That we can't do. But I do think it's more than logical. The easiest one for me is Mr. Benson. We know for a fact that the Prairie Dog money is not going to be capitalized. There's going to be some small portion of it. Again, I still think it's far better. And I think I said this in one of our board advisory meetings calls. During that meeting, I said something to the effect, it was the township officer meeting. I said it's going to be, some portion of the 30 million where we're going to get tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands in lieu of our 7 million. So could someone argue, oh, you're reducing taxes that way? No, what we're doing is we're subsidizing a void that was created because of the COVID pandemic. That is 100% justifiable. Things like, anyway, I can stop there. So I think that's what it is. If we were to say we're going to take this money and, again, I don't know, cut taxes to $0, that we cannot do, and it specifically calls it out that we cannot do it that way. Anything further, Commissioner Sherling? Okay, commissioners, anything further? This, Mr. Wilson, you have the floor again, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I missed that question.
You have the floor again.
Oh, thank you, sir. We covered the motions. The one last thing that I wanted to chat with you about, if we have finished with recovery fund discussion, is the Bionex testing. And at this point, we have been making weekly Bionex COVID-19 testing available weekly to county employees. I think we've had decent turnout for that. I think that is the number of people who are getting that testing done is starting to maybe trickle off a little bit, because we have more and more county employees who are at various stages in the vaccination process. We've got some in social services, for example, that were really early in the process, and in many cases have gone beyond their second dose and their fully vaccinated status. Others 1 week in, and so they're still a little bit earlier on. CDC came out, I believe it was last week, and said if you're, I think it's 2 weeks post second vaccination, you should not be getting tested at that point, because then you're really going to be essentially showing up a positive test, or a very high likelihood that you would. So we do have a recommendation from Mr. Prochniak, County Emergency Manager, who really has been spearheading this effort and has done a great job coordinating both with public health on all of the testing needs and his counterparts across the state, as well as the state of North Dakota. And we have a recommendation to conclude county employee Bionex testing as of April 22nd. I think that's a good recommendation, just based on the facts that county employees who by that point will have had the opportunity to get their second dose, and I think the utilization of that testing will be dramatically reduced. If employees still have a need for the testing, they will have opportunities through Fargo-Cass Public Health to do, but I think we've largely been successful in this effort. But as we move on to these dates that are listed, I think, quite frankly, we can make better use of Mr. Prochniak's time.
Thank you, Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. I think that's a reasonable plan, but I'm just curious, is there a way to do that as a part of at-home testing, or do you have to come in? I mean, could employees, especially I think employees that, I don't know, could be exposed as part of their job, you know, if they could have a kid at home that they could swab themselves Monday morning before they come in, is that anything that would work or not?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Sherling, there is some training that's involved with that testing. I really wouldn't be able to answer to that extent. I do know that it did come out from the federal administration last week that very testing that we are offering is the testing that they're going to make available to families and homes. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do it. Heck, I'm doing it. So,
well, I think especially if you've got little kids at home that aren't going to get vaccinated, I don't know. It just curious if that sounds like it might work at some point.
The one thing that I may offer about our tests that I also shared with Mr. Wilson, our tests are going to start to expire in the month of May. So our kids. Thank you.
Commissioner Shirley, anything further?
No, we should get rid of those kits though before, I mean, no sense in letting them expire if you can give them to your teenager when they come home. You know, why not?
Anything further on this, Mr. Wilson, or anything further on Binex?
Nothing further.
Okay, anything further on your update?
I have no additional information unless there are board questions for me.
Maybe one thing we could share with our phone call this morning with Desi. It's an interesting thing, the position we're in here in Cass County as juxtaposed to some of our peers around the country. We are almost to the stage of allowing open applications for getting your vaccinations, which is not happening in a lot of places around the U.S. The concern is actually an interesting one because what they've shared is we're still getting the numbers of vaccines in, and we're now struggling or getting to the point to almost struggling to find arms to put them in, which again is the exact opposite of what's happening around the country. So if you know anybody that hasn't gotten their vaccination or is wanting to get their vaccination, now is the time to push them towards our medical providers in our area, because again, we're going to get to the point of we have too many vaccines and not enough people to give them to. So it's a wonderful problem to have, but make sure we share throughout our community, our neighborhoods, our networks, that if you want your vaccine, you're going to be able to get it. Side anecdotal story, friend of mine, his girlfriend from New York, he's from Minneapolis, flew her into Minneapolis. They drove up here to get her vaccine in Fargo because she cannot get it in New York City. Her family went through a lot of bad COVID things, so she's extremely paranoid about it. And they can't get it in New York, and they're for the foreseeable future, or New Jersey, for the foreseeable future, which is just mind-boggling to me that we're going to have so many people here, and we have other states across the union that are borderline chaos in terms of distribution. I just can't even process how that's real, but she was here. I had lunch with him. Just strange. But, Mr. Wilson, anything else from this morning?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just one other comment on that. I've already had, based on that call this morning, already had a conversation with our public information coordinator, Mr. Solom, that of how do we further our effort to get that out to the rural parts of the county, to the smaller cities, the townships, the schools, and I know that he's in close contact weekly, if not daily, with his public information officer counterparts at Fargo, West Fargo, and I think there's an effort that we're part of that discussion this morning on the call to really do an all-out push for an information campaign to make people aware of that. And so I came from that call and mentioned to Catlin this morning, hey, we need to do this, and he said, yeah, we're working on it. So I think they will be developing that and messaging that very, very quickly.
I know with HIPAA rules and things like this is a tough question, so answer or don't based on what you feel is right. Do we have any perspective, for Mr. Pashniak too, maybe? Do we have any perspective as to how many of the county employees have received their vaccinations? Any idea? Is it 10%, 50%, 85%?
I would tell you that I know Human Services did a informal poll a number of weeks ago of how many were in the vaccination process, and I think at that point they were in I want to say the 80% range. I don't know that they've updated that since. I think the sheriff's office took maybe a similar snapshot a couple of weeks before that. At that point, they were in the 50-ish percentile range. I would presume since then they've moved that up. I don't have any better information on that, and Mr. Prokniak might.
Commissioner, Chairman, I would just base it off of the people that are coming in for the rapid testing and the comments that they share. In roughly, I would say it's got to be 80 to 90%, and they're thrilled, and they were thrilled when it was opened up.
Okay, and that's,
They jumped on the opportunity.
I know we've got a younger population here, which is why, especially within law enforcement, which is why they lag, because we're not going to have a lot of those people that were eligible for A, B, and C. I do think whatever we can do to encourage them to get their vaccination would be great. Just so you know, commissioners, the numbers we've been talking about on our morning phone calls and then our Wednesday roundtables with the state, on average, flu shots are in that 50-ish% range. Well, I think Dr. Carson said his hope was to exceed 60% as the mass. Ideally, the herd immunity is an 80% number plus or minus. So how we get to that 80%, I don't know, but just through natural exposure, I'm guessing. But if we can surpass that 60%, we will consider it a victory, not only just, I think, as a community, but within the medical community, their number is 60 and they consider that a victory. So I hope we can get there. And obviously, if we're even 70, 80, if we're at 90% in the courthouse, that would be a remarkable thing, because that is obviously far surpassing, which I think it speaks to the understanding of what we're doing here too, but it speaks to how much we care about our customers. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, Sheriff Johnner just updated me that they're, I think, roughly at about 50% across the Sheriff's Office.
But again, it's a younger community too, so as that comes out, let everybody know that we're almost to that point of opening it up. Okay, enough of that. Anything else for Corona, commissioners? If not, item 4, subdivision ordinance. Mr. Wilson, I think it's you, right?
Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we had a special meeting a week and a half ago at this point, I think. Element of that was to finalize an agreement on a matter that focused on a particular property owner about rebuilding a highway access on County Road 16. Related to that, tangentially, it was and in some fashion was a question over county subdivision ordinance and an ability to enforce that. And through the work on this particular agreement that we were working on, there were also some questions that and a comment that resolution of that matter did not settle the question of the enforceability of the subdivision ordinance. And there was a commission question of, were we going to be following up on that? This item right here is engaging the private legal counsel who has background and expertise in this matter of law to forward that effort and move that work forward. Mr. Burdick, if he's on the line, may want to speak to that in greater detail. But Mr. Burdick has worked with the attorney that this agreement would be signed with, and could speak more specifically to the work of this agreement.
Mr. Burdick or Ms. Peters, any thoughts on this? I actually have a question for you if you are online. It's Mr. Burdick, I'm muting.
Yes, thank you. I have worked with Mr. Gostad a number of times. I'm getting feedback, not sure why. On the recent agreement that we had with Mr. Bifford on this matter, together with a number of other cases. He's an experienced lawyer, works on cases of this type across the state on behalf of the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. In this case, it would not be through the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, but on our dollar, because it's taking a different approach and not in a defensive approach. So I think that this is a good thing. He's very familiar with the project and would be a good aid to our efforts.
Mr. Burdick, it's my understanding we're going to have not just this attorney on the job, we're going to have one of your team, whether it's yourself, Ms. Peters, or someone else, sort of shadowing along so they can become educated as to the process and all the ramifications of said process. Is that true?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you. And that's a good thing, because then we'll have that, starting building that internal knowledge that I think is incredibly important. Commissioner Sherling.
So at the township officers meeting last week, there's still obviously a lot of questions regarding our subdivision ordinance. Will this help clarify some of those questions?
Mr. Burdick jump in, and then Mr. Wilson.
Well, I'll let Mr. Wilson respond, and then I'll answer anything more that needs to be.
Okay, vice versa. Mr. Wilson, then Mr. Burdick if need be.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sherling, I certainly expect that the end result of this effort will be substantially more clarity on the county subdivision ordinance as it relates and impacts townships.
What my hope, Commissioner Sherling, is that this sort of solidifies what we already know, and that our townships, especially the Stanleys and Reeds that are growing and are going to, as we said during the township officer meeting, they're going to grow and continue to grow. It's not going to stop. They would then have to adopt some sort of a process in terms of planning and permitting, because right now, Reed Township, perfect example, they've got their team member going through a friend of theirs who happens to be a friend of mine. He's the building inspector. He's a mechanical engineer. He's, he's well intended and all that, but building inspectors have a certain training, and you're taking on a certain amount of liability when you sign off on something. And no matter how well educated you are, as I mentioned in the township officer meeting, City of Fargo has been sued and lost because of failed inspections. You need to have training. You need to have people that are professional. We have that with the engineering department. We certainly could grow that programming, but hopefully this will then push them to do the right thing. And whether they adapt their own or cut and paste ours, I don't care, but there needs to be something there for them to lean upon when hog plants show up.
Well, and I believe, the home that we're dealing with on our flood sales tax agenda today probably falls into that, that it was built at an improper height, and now it's a mess. So, who's responsible and who pays for it?
I didn't listen to your meeting. That's Commissioner Breitling.
There are two things that I'd like to bring to the commission's attention. The first is that Mr. Gosted's involvement in the agreement that was approved by us at a special meeting was paid for by the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. It was done so because of Mr. Burdick's contact of the Insurance Reserve Fund and saying, look, if you're proactive, it would save you money to resolve the matter before you have to come in and defend. And so the Insurance Reserve Fund is the one who compensated Mr. Gosted for his involvement. And so we did not spend one nickel in that regard. The other two items that I would like to think that are important for us to understand is that we do have at least my understanding from Mr. Montplaisir is a part of our budget sets aside $20,000 a year for involvement of private counsel. So it's not something that's going to have to come out of any special fund. The last item that I would mention is that I have reviewed the proposed retainer agreement with Mr. Gosted and have discussed it with litigators that I know in the community, and it appears to be in proper form and an agreement that is pretty standard throughout the profession.
Commissioners, any further discussion or questions? Commissioner Steen.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I move to authorize the chair to sign fee and representation agreement with Pearson Christensen LLP for work related to subdivision ordinance enforcement.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moving second. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Breitling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 5, Cass County Youth Commission Program Update. Rochniak, you want to take this, or Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'll probably give some opening statements, and then I think Mr. Prokniak will follow up. Obviously, with COVID-19, the normal schedule of the Cass County Youth Commission curriculum was suspended last summer. Typically, orientation in late summer runs through the school district, wraps up by the end of the school year. And without being able to gather in person, really was agreed upon, I think unanimously, that it just was not going to work in any kind of a virtual setting, and so it was agreed to take a pause. During that pause time, and I think the commission was briefed on this when that decision was made, that the advisory committee, made up of a number of different county employees chaired by Mr. Prokniak, was going to really sort of reassess and make sure, is the curriculum that we were offering the right curriculum? Is it offered in the right way? Does it have the right individuals from the county shouldering the appropriate burden to deliver the curriculum? Because I think it certainly was worth noting, and once members of the committee provided feedback to my office, became apparent that the level of effort that employees were putting into that project had, I think, expanded significantly over the course of the year. And so they just really took it to heart to reassess the project, ask, are they doing the right things, and perhaps make some recommendations coming out of that self-assessment. You've seen the survey results. You see my briefing memo that the questions were in its current form. Is it serving the mission or an intended purpose? Is it targeting the right students? What changes should be considered? Who should oversee the program? And should the Cass County Youth Commission program continue? First of all, really just applaud the committee for taking a look at some of those hard questions, because in many ways this is a popular program, and we appreciate that we have the chance to interact with students in that way. But are we really doing the right thing and serving the right students? And the feedback from the members of the committee is that I think to summarize, the workload for a small number of county employees is significant. The students that it is serving and the leadership understanding and opportunities in many ways they're getting from other avenues. These are in some cases really the top students from their schools who are being exposed to leadership opportunities. In some ways, they are the kids that are trusted to be outside the schoolhouse confines for significant amounts of time. And I think there was also some feedback that what do students, if this moves forward, need to be exposed to? And do they need to be exposed more to commissioners and the work of commissioners? Mr. Prokniak, I think I've talked way too long. I think I would turn it over to you for any additional comments and feedback you'd want to provide.
Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners, this was not an easy discussion on our team's call when the committee met, nor is it easy right now because, quite frankly, the final outcomes kind of bears two different results. One, scrap the program. Two, turn it over to the admin office and or commission. And so how did we get to that point? We felt that a lot of the leadership programs that the Youth Commission in its current format was offering, particularly to the target audience, those programs were already being attended by those students because they're the all-stars. They knew those programs better than the committee did. many of the students were tapped by the counselors to go to the Cass County Youth Commission or attend the Youth Commission, or we had to hound the school to even get somebody to attend. Not all the schools, mind you, but many of them. It really caused us to sit there and hesitate and wonder what direction we should go. We also had conversation in that call about, what has transpired over the past year. We've had a lot of things go on in our own little Kansas. When you take a look at protests, when you take a look at how the pandemic has affected all parts of the world, when you take a look at floods, and now we're probably facing drought, and what decisions are made by this body right here with advice from an administrative office, and how those shake out. And quite frankly, we got down to brass tacks in our discussion, and I know that I've maybe shared this before. There just was not a lot. There's interest by some of those students to possibly pursue a career if it involves Birch's office or Jason Benson's office or Robert's office, but not my office. I didn't know what this position is.
Hard to believe.
Maybe my previous life, but or the sheriff's position, but and I know that is hard to believe, Mr. Chair, but I think as I get to know the decisions at a county level, and I see what has transpired over the past year, and listening to the discussions from the committee members, we felt if some semblance of this continues, it's maybe smaller, more concise, more compressed. The 9 months of attendance, not to mention the 11 months of effort by the committee members, was too much, is too much. And so whatever way, shape, or form, if it does continue, we are recommending that it either has served its purpose and does not, or has direct interaction with this body that I'm speaking to tonight. And whatever shape or form, by the way, I should add, there are still some members of the committee that would be willing to steer some of that and get that launched. They don't want to take ownership from a standpoint of continual work, but they want to assist lift, get it going, and be a resource for that. And then be done. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. I shared with, I gotta admit, I shared, Mr. Chair, with Robert, it feels like I'm the one that killed something here.
Because you are.
And so to put the team's call into perspective with the committee, when some of these hard questions were asked, the silence was deafening. And from a standpoint of, I think we all kind of sensed where this was going, or that maybe others just, everybody realized it was just too much to continue with, particularly in its current format.
So I don't have a question, much as a thought. So the reality is we all feel like we're picking on Charlotte. Okay? If you didn't say that, I did. If your committee didn't say that, I did. Obviously, that's not the case. I don't believe it's the case at all. But to that end, I think that there is a value in continuing this, a tremendous value. So maybe I disagree with some of the people on this committee, but I think it needs to evolve. I think we've sort of let it maybe stagnate, for lack of a better term, because everything became everyone, the process once established, regardless of what the process is easier to maintain than to rethink or reinvent, right? So we had this system set in place. It just sort of chugged every year. We had the welcome, we had department by department, then we had the graduation. If we were to rethink it, that's a great deal of effort and time, and knowing full well, and not disparagingly, you guys are busy. The people that, whether it was the Charlottes of the world or just the team members or the department heads that had to interact with these kids periodically, you had that on your calendar, and rethinking what you had to do takes time. So I think now, always a silver lining, you've heard me say that because I believe it. With the pandemic pause, this was the opportune time in my mind to reinvent what this thing could be. And whether it becomes, Mr. Wilson and I have talked about this too, so you guys don't know this, but I've been bothering him for minions. I need people, I need staff, but I don't need full-time staff. What I need is help during the legislative session to write up testimony, or to check my testimony, or to bounce ideas off of, or could you read this bill and give me your thoughts? And I realize you're going to have, team members or minions that aren't going to be, up to your caliber, where I ask you to give me your thoughts on a bill. But it's that sort of a dialogue, I think, that's important. And even as much as helping me look things up, do some research for me. Where I'm going with that is, I knew that couldn't be high school students. What I wanted it to be was poli-sci students or communication students, where each commissioner would be assigned one student every semester, and if you use them, you use them. If you don't, you don't. But at least there's an opportunity. I know for a fact I'd use 2. I could keep them bustling. This isn't a 40-hour-a-week deal. This is 2 hours here, 3 hours there. Is the focus, my point here is the focus the wrong age? What if we went to college students for this, where they're looking for a job within the next year or two? They're looking for internships. In some cases, what I brought to Sheriff Laney and then now Sheriff Johnner was recruiting problems within a jail within Pennsylvania. I serve on a committee talking to some people. Everybody has problems getting COs. Everybody has problems getting COs. What this county did was they started going to the high schools and said, does anyone here want to work in a jail? Because right now the people we recruit are sort of whoever applies and well-meaning people, but a lot of them want to then progress on to something new. They want to be a deputy, they want to be a sheriff, they want to be something. Well, what this county did was they said, we are focusing solely on children that want to eventually be in a jail, not to go on and drive a car. And you're not going to find 1,000 kids to do this, but you're going to find 2. And if you find 2 every year that just want to work in the jail, I want to be Andy Forbig and I want to run the jail someday. Those people stick around. They don't ever bounce out. They stay there into perpetuity. And this jail in that Pennsylvania County has built its base staff of leadership from that recruiting tool. So again, the point is that I think the program has value. I think it needs to evolve, and maybe even evolve to the point of a different customer base. I don't know how else to say it, student base. And maybe not, but yeah, I'll stop with this. I believe it needs to continue in some form. What that form is, figure it out. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer right now, but continuing it the way it was, I think is not maybe the best idea. I'll stop there. Commissioners, your thoughts? And if you don't have any, that's okay too. Commissioner Sherlin.
Well, I think we have to really look at what our role is, and I don't think that this falls within our role. If there's a way to do something like you're talking about, Commissioner Peterson, that might be an option, but it's not our role to educate children on government. They have government classes. Actually, NDSU, Cass County Extension, has got classes. They could be doing this as well, and people might ask and I know they ask, is that even their role? Because they go over to the schools after school is out, and you have extension agents out there. But I don't think that it's our role to do this. Certainly not at the level and commitment and time that it's taken from the staff to do this with, really minimal results. Although I will ask, perhaps we we do have a former student here. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Did it influence you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it influenced me. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here before you right now if I hadn't been through the program. I mean, I'm going to be honest, when I was sitting there in high school, I wasn't like, okay, my dream job is to go work at the county. That wasn't, exactly how I envisioned it. But I think I agree with everything that you guys are saying, that, it needs to be re-geared. I personally was one of those students that a couple of the times we were going through, the leadership training, and I was like, well, I've already heard this like 3 or 4 other times. So I agree with that part. And I really like the aspect you guys were talking about getting, the commissioners more involved. I mean, I understand what you were saying. It's not, exactly your role, but I think it would just be, the only opportunity that I can remember is, I think 2 people were asked to go in front of the commission and just kind of present at the end of the year what we had done and successes and stuff. But if we could have maybe, I don't know, met with you like 1 or 2 times and just like had like maybe an open kind of forum if we had questions, or you could maybe even just talk about what you do. I think that would have been beneficial, especially because as I've started in this job, people are asking me if I know city commissioners. I'm like, no, I work for the county commissioners, not city. So I think it's like a lot of even just general public don't understand the difference between city and county government. And so I think that's, something important, I guess.
I've been a city commissioner off and on for the last 20 years. I was the mayor at one time. And I'm not exaggerating. You guys have heard me say the story. I chaired a board this Board of Adjustment City of Fargo. So I was on TV once a month all the time. And I was chairing the meetings for a period of years. My friends thought I was the mayor. I think it is our job to educate the public at large, because no, government class does not teach city politics, does not teach county politics. Like I said, not everyone's had my introduction. I don't know what class you were in, Taylor. I don't think you heard me say this, but I think you were long gone. One of the things I said in one of the last meetings we had, or last classes we had, was at the beginning and then at the end, I said the beginning was, I need you guys to talk to your parents. So I need you to educate your parents, because your parents have no clue what the courthouse is. 30, 40, 50, 70-year-old people have no clue. And I told the story of how, I could endless stories. We're all here seeing people come before us, not understanding that they don't pay property taxes to us for schools and libraries. Very rich, very well-educated people that have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in property taxes don't understand that we don't do pools. And it's no different in the city of Fargo. They don't understand that either. So I think the more we can do to educate people, is particularly in their youth, and then use this also as a sidebar, as a recruiting tool, I think it's ingenious. The trick is to figure out the methodology and what makes sense. What that is, I don't know. But I think there's got to be a middle ground from where we were to where we could be in terms of killing it. I think it serves a value. And until somebody starts, if we don't cheer for the county, no one will. That's why I wanted Catlin involved too, is we need a Catlin. Why? Because no one, luckily we had press here today, and I think he's gotten better, but if we don't have people understanding and learning and spreading the message for us, no one will. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I've had a number of conversations with Jim, with Cindy in our HR office, and I think I've got a couple of ideas of how we could evolve the program. I would look at really looking at that college age. I think where you've got sort of the college sophomore, junior age where kids are starting to think about careers. I think you need to work with the guidance counselors and the career development offices in the colleges around here. And I think there are some concepts that I'm curious to see what the reception would be of that from the colleges, from the staff over there, because I think we've got ideas of what we would like to see it become. Those may not be universally agreed upon even among yourselves, but I think we've got some ideas that we can explore. And I certainly would pursue any direction you have that you give on this. But I've got, at least in concept form, a couple of ideas that I would like to run with to see what we could do, given the feedback we've received, both from the committee, from the board today, and see if we get something, can come up with something that I don't know if it'll check all the boxes, but I feel like I've got, with your direction, got enough ideas that I might be able to get that conversation going of how we can move this forward.
And I don't know that you need to check all the boxes, Mr. Wilson. I think, again, this is just me. I think it should continue, just different. And I think you need to look at it every year or every 2 years if it does continue. And it's no pride of authorship or ownership. I mean, obviously, with Charlotte being here, it was her baby. So you felt like if you disagreed, it was not attacking, but I'm going to use that word. You felt like you're attacking her ideas. Well, I think her retirement allows us to rethink and then not have an individual focus, meaning it's all Jim's fault, right? If it's just Jim's idea. If you have a communal set of directions and you look at it every year and go, boy, that sitting with Chad was a waste of time. Holy crap, let's not do that again. And then next year it's different, and the year after it's different, until you get to a point where maybe 3 or 5 or 7 years down the line, you have the right participants and you have the right messaging, and maybe it's 2 meetings, maybe it's 6, maybe you go back to 9. I don't know, whatever it is, but I think there's nothing wrong with rethinking it all the time in an effort to do what you think and the committee thinks is best. Close counts to me in this right now.
Mr. Chair, your comments are duly noted, and I just want to thank the body for not killing the messenger. So appreciate it.
I blame you though, so just saying. Commissioners, again, I've kind of dominated this a little bit. Are we okay with what we perceive or I perceive as pushing forward? Let's figure out what this can be, and it's not dead yet. See a nodding head or two. Commissioner Steed?
I was just going to verbally say I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that it would seem a shame to drop a program versus trying to improve a program. It's, listen to Taylor, what she had to say about it, and we've talked to other people. They tell us what we want to hear, maybe the students do, and we hear that. But you can also look at those who are continued their involvement and we're passionate about it as a student. I don't know what the answer is. I don't disagree with what you suggested. And maybe 9 is asking a lot. 9 meetings might be asking a lot of any group of people that come to meetings. But we're gonna have something to educate them on how county works, what happens, how it's different than city, who we represent, what authority we have, what authority we don't have. It'd be interesting. I just think it'd be something it'd be nice to try to pursue and go forward. And we don't have to do it this year. We can work on it to improve a program, but I think it needs to be done somehow.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Captain.
Mr. Chair, I would beg your indulgence to call a 2-minute recess for a nature call, please.
Oh, absolutely. We'll take a pause and come back at about 5:40, 7 minutes. Okay. You can leave it open. Doesn't matter. I've got a call from Again, we are now back in order. Commissioner Sherling, you have a question?
Is there any particular reason that these next two items aren't on the consent agenda after all these years?
So we've had that discussion in the past, and I guess from my perspective, and again, just me, I like having this discussion if we ever have nuances in lieu of pulling them down. And I guess it's a matter of habit. I guess I wouldn't object to them going to consent, but I like the idea of having Mike give us updates.
I do too. It just, but we could put it on it.
We can put anything on the agenda, yeah. Mr. Montplaisir, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am. And
What are your thoughts of this moving to consent? I like the idea of having it here, but what do you think, Mr.
Well, just to inform you that the process is going to change next month. Next month, instead of you passing a motion to transfer money to the city of Fargo as the fiscal agent, under the new financing agreements that we're going to be signing, we're going to have to transfer this money directly to the bond trustee, which I think is going to be the Bank of North Dakota, within days after receiving the funds from the state. So what we'll come up with is a report to you at the beginning of every month, how much the sales tax were and how much we transferred to the bond trustee. So it will change. It won't be on the agenda as an action item after that.
Okay, well, good job, Commissioner Sherling. Great idea.
One little question, if I may.
Commissioner Steen.
So, Mr. Montplaisir, won't B change as well? As I understand it, we're no longer asking for a reimbursement request. We'll get the money and that'll be that.
There will be some changes in that. I'm not sure that we're going to get the money directly. I think we're going to have to ask for reimbursement. But the process of having the county and the Water Resource District sign off was tied to some funding for specific years, and I think we're getting to the end of those years.
Right.
So
what Commissioner Steen is thinking about is when we have to go out and testify before the State Water Commission and ask for the 60 million, right? Now that's all gone. Right. Here's the dollar figure. We'll still have to ask for reimbursements, but we'll no longer have to go out and lobby for them anymore. Is that what you're thinking, or?
Yeah, I didn't understand. From what I understand, once they bonded the deal, it goes into a pool or a pot.
Yeah, it's done. Okay. Whereas before, so every session, we'd have to go out and renegotiate for what would be, was it 66 million or 63, Mike?
66 million.
Yeah, so we don't have to do that. It's done.
So who's going to be requesting the money from the Water Commission? Is it going to be the county or is it going to be the diversion authority?
It's still going to be the city of Fargo as they have been, I believe. It's just that instead of it going to the city of Fargo, then it's going to be going to the bond trustee. State Water Commission still wants to know how we're spending our money, I believe. Or their money, I should say.
Taxpayers' money. I'm just curious, what do we have to do? I mean, anyway, we'll figure that out. I'm just curious when you brought it up, so.
Okay, Mr. Montplaisir, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, the amount that we're transferring this month is $1,342,523.91. And, that's 94% of what we received in March. The nice thing about doing this report is it does put in front of the commission, how the sales tax is growing or not growing. And in the last couple of years, it's been growing. And so that's been a positive note. In the financing, we didn't, originally we had projected about a 3% growth. And then we lost money for a couple of years, and I think we're at 1 or 1.5% expected growth in our financing projections.
Yeah, Mr. Montplaisir, as you said, I've communicated this to some of our peers, both in the city and across the river too, and those commissioners don't have a clue what sales tax are, and I'm not disparaging anybody. It's just interesting that they're just disconnected with that. And, we have so much pending on these resources coming in, and that so few people understand how much money we're bringing in. It's kind of intriguing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is just A for now. Is that okay? Yeah. Just topic A. Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling? Yes. Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 6B, Mr. Montplaisir.
This is your 114th request to the State Water Commission. Fargo prepares these reports, and as I mentioned, the county and the Water Resource District have to sign off on them to request the funds from the state. This request is for $9,862,646.70.
Commissioners. Commissioner Skeen.
Sure. Find this. I would move to authorize the chair to sign reimbursement request number 114 in the amount of $9,862,646.70 to the State Water Commission to distribute funds to the Metro Flood Diversion Authority according to the terms and conditions of House Bill N20.
For a second, please.
Second.
Second, any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 6, vouchers, Mr. Steen.
Cast review the vouchers and I recommend approval.
For a second, please.
Second.
Moving second, any discussion? Any discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Brightling?
Yes.
Commissioner Steen?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Capitan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherling?
Yes.
Motion passes. Committee reports. Mr. Wilson is not here, therefore we'll skip Mr. Wilson. Commissioner Brightling.
I have one report to make. Some months ago, a gentleman by the name of Kyle Nelson appeared before us requesting us to take some positive action relative to what he called the Wheatland Channel. And it was a intermittent natural water course that back in the 50s, the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, constructed a channel by straightening out many of those intermittent natural water course movements. In any event, there was never a legal drain established at that time. Mr. Kyle Nelson is now requesting that we establish a maintenance district for that channel. And we've met with representatives of the Maple River Water Resource Board who have told us that in order for them to do so, they're eventually going to need the permission of this group. Normally, that's not so with a legal drain process. However, they have now, because we have suggested they should move forward, they have found out by examination of the records of the Register of Deeds, the various right-of-way instruments that were procured, the channel location from the old plans that were existent back in the 50s. And they are in the process of developing a benefit area and levels of benefit within that area. When that's completed, they will then notice a meeting and mail notices to all the property owners within that benefit area. They're going to invite us to attend because eventually, even if they approve, that will not become a benefit area unless this commission also approves. And so I would urge that when we get that information, that we all attend that meeting so that we can, with some degree of intelligence, vote on the topic. That's the only report I have for
Is there a timeline, Commissioner?
No, not immediately. It takes a while for them to kick back and forth at meetings about what area should be in the benefit area and what levels of benefit exist. And that's important because, for example, if it's 100% benefit area, they can get stuck with a $4 an acre annual maintenance levy. And if it's a 75%, it would be 3/4 of that, and step down with each level of benefit. And their usual procedure is to generally go into 4 areas of benefit: 100, 75, 50, and 25. That doesn't mean that that's chiseled in stone, because when I looked at the benefit area established for the diversion project, actually they I think, found 10 different areas of benefit, and it varies all over the board. And that's possible here too, but when I've looked at the preliminary map of the area, it is not that large, so there shouldn't be any, I don't believe there should be a need for them to deviate from their standard procedure of 175, 50, and 25. It's not a large area.
Where is that at?
Well, it basically, the Wheatland Channel starts on the west side of Wheatland, and it goes down the county road to the interstate, and then it meanders easterly and then back down into another township, and eventually empties into the Maple River through intermittent natural water courses that aren't real definitive.
Anything else, Commissioner Brightling?
I have nothing else to report.
Commissioner Sherling?
Well, as along with most of the rest of you, I was at Castleton last week for the township officers meeting, and the conversations I had afterwards were striking to me that this subdivision of lands policy really needs to get straightened out. It's confusing to everybody. The implications are tremendous for landowners, and they just don't get it. And we just need to, we've had these conversations for years, but we really do need to get it settled. It's just not in anybody's best interest not to have this this established.
May I interject something here? A year ago, our road department and the ordinance group for Cass County retained the services of Cadremusley and Jackson to redo or to relook at redefining and redoing, to the extent necessary, our ordinance. They actually had several public meetings planned, which went by the wayside and put a hold on this project for about a year. The public meetings were going to be out in the townships to gather input and feedback. I've had some preliminary discussions with Jason some time ago that seem to indicate that the process is probably going to be redone in a significant fashion, addressing some of the concerns you've heard about and some of the concerns that I have, because it can end up in arbitrary decisions by that planning commission. But I think it's important that we know that they're trying to do something about it, and that the pandemic has really raised hell with it because they couldn't have all their public meetings.
Well, that I'm glad to hear that. I mean, several years ago, I was on a committee with Mr. Burdick, Mr. Benson, and the planner at the time, and you know, I recognize that it's complicated. So, in addition to that, I've been fielding several phone calls from landowners, and particularly Stanley Township, wondering what the heck happened to their property valuations. So I'll be talking to Mr. Percassi tomorrow about a couple of them in particular. You know, it's a weird area, especially when you're in Fargo's ET area. There's, you know, you can see Davies High School from their barns, and you know, it's a situation. So, and then also, we've had some challenges at the jail with nursing staff, and I've recently met with Fargo and Fargo Cass Public Health, and I think that we are making some progress there, and we can get things back to staff, hopefully in short order. So that concludes my report.
Commissioner, Mr. Burdick.
No report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Capitan.
No report.
Mr. Steen.
Just one thing to report, and Mike can expand on it if he chooses to. There will be a meeting of the Cass County Canvassing Board on Wednesday, this 7th, to correct the official abstract to include 385 votes countywide that were not included at the time of the general election. And because you two decide to run for election, I get to chair that meeting as well.
Awesome. So good. Good. All right, Mr. Montplaisir.
Just one item along on the elections thing is we did appoint an elections committee, and we should meet fairly quickly, and I'm hoping we can do that maybe Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday next week sometime.
Yep, that works for me. I'm here. I actually plan on being out of town this week, and I'm not going to be. I'm too busy with everything. So, yeah. Anyway, it's my pleasure. Anything further?
Just that we'll need times that you and Commissioner Steen could be available.
I am around and available as you need me, my friend.
Talking next week?
Next week.
Pretty much available except for Wednesday.
Okay, we'll set something up, try to get it set up tomorrow.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Montplaisir?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Question for my report. I was out in Bismarck for a couple days, a couple things. Spoke against the mask. Spoke against the ability to take away, let me start over here. So I was in Bismarck last week and testified against the bill that would remove our authority to regulate masks and face coverings, which is funny because the place was packed solid, and they had no mask buttons, and they were the no-vaxxer crowd, and that's fine. But I made a world of enemies, and it's interesting, and I say this because they're protesting right now in Bismarck. No one's read the bill. They simply think it's just about this, and it's way more than that. And it was regarding spit masks in the jail and requiring our welders to wear welding hoods and our vector control team, as an example, to wear respirators. We couldn't do any of that anymore. The bill was so poorly written, it literally means we can't require anyone to do anything to protect even goggles, I suppose you carry to that. So if you're splashing chemicals around, you can't wear goggles. It's just, so that's
force you to wear
correct. And so part of my testimony, which made everyone laugh, which was fun, was that if of course, the response to that is, who's not going to wear a welder's hood when they're welding? Who's not going to wear a respirator around chemicals going to make their lungs burn? And my testimony was, just as a general reminder, that there's a case right now of a lady who put glue in her hair, didn't realizing that glue in her hair would glue her hair. And so she did do that, and she's suing the glue company because, again, she didn't realize gluing her hair would result in her hair being glued. She's going to win hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So there's that whole thing. So we all want to believe that no one is that foolish and that's going to make that silly of a mistake. But the world is full of them. Plastic bags have labels, don't put this over your head because you're going to suffocate, because some idiot put a bag over their head and suffocated, probably more than once. So we can all talk about how we don't think anyone's going to be damaged. Well, that liability either goes directly to us for their burned out retinas or their burned out lungs, or to the Insurance Reserve Fund, which again indirectly is all of us. So that's what my testimony was. I didn't speak about mask mandates. I didn't speak about any of that stuff. And it's fun because, like I said, here they sit now out in Bismarck protesting, not realizing what the bill actually says. Whatever. And where I'm going with that, Mr. Burdick, is I was then confronted, and that's maybe overstating that, but not really, as I left testifying, by a gentleman saying it is illegal for me to testify. Luckily, Terry Traynor was there to say, no, it's been tested in court. So Mr. Burdick or Ms. Peters, I would be very curious to find out your opinion on this, not today, but just sometime in passing in the next year or three, that I do have the ability, I don't forego my freedom of speech, A, and then B, I do have the duty to protect my team, which is my Cass County family, as well as our friends within Cass County itself, for other things, other matters beyond this mask thing, that it's my not only responsibility but duty to go out and testify against bad legislation. So when you're bored, Mr. Burdick or Ms. Peters, I would be curious to find out your opinion on that. Other thing I did, I talked to both Chris Jones and Sarah Stoltz about LSS. That is really sort of flying under the radar right now purposefully because of all the political dynamics we're going through, A, and then B, They want to get through the session. So I got a briefing on that. There'll be a roundtable. So the Burgum administration will be speaking to the federal government regarding the numbers of people we think we can take in. And as much power as we think we have as sovereign states, that's simply a request or a discussion. Governor Burgum and his team have no say in limiting. The federal government will determine who comes and how many come. That's just facts. That's the law as it stands right now. So they'll be doing that in the coming weeks. That will then be followed with a community roundtable, which I've been very vocal with everyone, plus now again last week with Jones and Stoltz, that I want to be included. Again, it's not just me, it's an open meeting. So they'll have our community roundtable with all of those that have a vested interest in LSS and what it will become in the future. I also met with, regarding that, former director, Mayor Mahoney, Commissioner Strand, regarding this whole topic. It just seems as though, the best way I can summarize it is, if any business of 280 people closed, there'd be a lot more discussion than we've had. I mean, essentially it closed without a whimper. It's just gone, and it's strange to me. So as I learn more about that, I'll share that with you as well. Yeah, I'll stop there. I've got meetings. We've all got meetings. I'll let you know what comes of it. Correspondent.
Can I add one more thing?
Commissioner Sherling, please.
You talk about personal responsibility and the mask mandate, and it's gotten to be quite controversial. And I'm certainly a big proponent of being personally responsible and not having to have mandates, because we should be able to be grown-ups and do the right thing. But I had several people that came up to me after the meeting last week that were upset about the burn ban. And I mean, it's a tinderbox out there,
Yep.
and
Medora.
and they're like, well, we're not going to be stupid enough to light a fire right now. Well, somebody must be, because
I agree.
there's fires out there.
You won't be. We agree.
Yeah, you're not the guy that I'm worried about, but anyway, just, when we take those votes and you think, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. No, it was fairly controversial.
Well, it's a no-brainer. Whether or not it comes with controversy, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I think we're lucky that Medora isn't burning as bad as we thought it was going to. But
That came within the steps.
yeah, well, my dad volunteered time so my dad was part of a big volunteer group. They'd go out and do volunteer construction projects, wiring, reconstruction of existing buildings. He did that for 20 years. All that within, yeah. So, okay. Anything further, commissioners? If not, correspondence.
Correspondence as received of April 5th, 2021. The first is a letter from the North Dakota Department of Insurance Reserve Fund regarding the conferment of benefit checks to be sent to members based on premium contributions in 2020. To go along with that was also a check from the NDIRF in the amount of $124,029 for payment of Cass County's share of the NDIRF conferment benefits from 2020. And finally, a letter from the United States Bankruptcy Court, Southern District of New York, informing Cass County of a disclosure statement hearing from Purdue Pharma LP on April 21st, 2020 at 10 a.m.
What did we receive?
Motion to receive and file. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second, discussion.
What did we receive?
Purdue Pharmaceuticals declared bankruptcy and is letting us know. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, and there's a public hearing if you want to attend that April 21st.
Yeah, the money you're suing us for is gone. So if you guys want to attend the public meeting,
Money's gonna go somewhere.
yeah. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Well, same sign. Motion passes. And item number 9.
So moved.
Second. Second. All those in favor? Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Have a good rest of your week.